There we go. I forgot to start the recorder. The verify the wages are correct. So ODGFS line would be here. And this is anybody that is either out-of-state or in-state employees that were marked as yes, as reportable to quarter or to ODGF wages. So that is what that figure line is. So, and that is found on your employee screen for the ODGFS marked, which is right here. And they get how we get this figure. We search for all employees in the history, pay history, any pay dates that fall within that reporting quarter. So again, you can verify that by running employees earnings register, maybe for the employee that you have in question, and using their total gross. Or you can use the quarter report and use the total gross for all those for that employee. So again, if you go to the quarter report, and you got to remember, if this employee has 3 pays, you have to add up each of those pays to get to that quarter to date ODGF gross amount. So here I have an example of an employee for my ODGFS. Find the employee here on my report. Somewhere here. Okay. So the quarter to date gross wages was 10,941. And if I went to the quarter report, quarter to date gross, and I added all their positions up, it comes up to that figure. And it should match your quarter to date gross too. So those figures should match. But there is some that they might not if they're out-of-state employees. So this quarter to date gross wages here doesn't include anybody out of state. And then if I run the employee's earning register, I get that same amount. So I know that that figure is correct. So if they are have a concern that that may not be right, that is a few things they can do to look for those employees. Also, maybe they can run employees, if they keep them in one pay group, they can run an employee's earnings register just for that pay group. And then they can use that amount to subtract off that quarter to date amount for those employees, which could be your student workers, your school board employees, anybody that is marked as that does not pay into ODGFS. To get these two wages might be different. Look for employees that are missing. So again, you might have employees that didn't get that flag checked right away on their first pay, because if they don't get that flag checked on that first pay, then it's not going to update those that figure correctly. So what they can do is go to the employee screen, go to more, and add in those last pay date, OGF hire date, OGDFS reportable in the state. And then they can look for anybody that is not reportable to ODGFS. And then make sure they do the pay date. I'm doing the fourth quarter. So I'm just putting in my fourth quarter dates to get these 5 employees. So again, you can look for anybody that was marked as false and double check to make sure, are they supposed to be marked as false? Or if they're not, then you know that you need to do a correction for these employees for the full amount of what their wages are so far. And they can get that by running an earnings register. Okay. Also look for the hire date. Maybe this, like I said, maybe this employee started 2 months prior, but then they didn't put the last hire date in till later, like 2 months later. So that hire date is incorrect. So double checked, look for those hire dates to make sure those are correct also for the quarter. Okay. If the employee was marked wrong before that first pay that they were paid on, then they're going to have to go into core adjustments to correct those wages. And you want to get the type of adjustment is the ODGFS total gross. Enter the amount that should be added to the report so far that they were paid, the date that has to fall within that quarter, and then the quarter to date box. This will update the quarter to date ODGF wages and the year to date taxable wages. So again, it's going to update these two lines here, these two columns. The next thing, quarter to date gross wages. Where does that come from? Again, this should equal the gross of all Ohio residents that are employed that are marked as ODGFs reportable, again, on the employee screen. That's where that figure is coming from. And again, this is that first line here. This includes the payroll item, Ohio tax state, total gross. So that should match what shows on their individual payroll items. 002 probably is what is going to be the payroll item, that total gross for that quarter. Again, any total gross adjustments from core adjustments that anything was added during that quarter, search for those 002 adjustments to that gross, to total gross. And then a reminder, the life insurance payments that were processed through payroll will be included in this amount also. So again, life insurance will be included in quarter to date gross wages, but it's not included in the ODGF quarter to date wages or the ODGFS submission file. It's just going to show here in the gross wages. Again, this field could be blank for out-of-state employees for your districts that have states employees that work from out of state around. Again, you can search for these employees again by going to core and looking for anybody that has a state other than Ohio. And this district that I'm using does not have any. They're all Ohio employees, but if I just use the search bar up here to go filter, it should bring up in alphabetical order. If it's Indiana, Michigan, Kentucky, Pennsylvania, it should show that. Again, you can also use here if you're searching for Michigan, doesn't have anybody, Indiana, or so you can see those employees. And then you can find those employees and get their wages and do the earnings register. You can run an earnings register for those employees to get their total gross. So that should be what your difference is between these two figures, because out-of-state employees do not get their quarter-to-date gross wages, but they are included in the ODGFS wages. The next thing is the year-to-date taxable wages. So again, the year-to-date tax was calculated for the employees' total earnings for the year-to-date taxable. And again, this is $9,000. So once they reach that $9,000 amount that they've been paid, they will fall off on that line. They will not have that any figure showing here. So again, these are districts that are contributing employers that they get charged a fee up to the 9,000. So once they get that 9,000, then they no longer get charged. So again, you just want to maybe remind that there could be a partial payment from the first quarter example to the second quarter. If they only have that first quarter was 8,000, and then the second quarter would be remaining on the year-to-date taxable of 1,000 of that 9,000. So just a reminder on that. Verified weeks for employees. So to verify weeks, it's any qualifying week that an employee works. So if they work one day during a week, if they're like a sub or something, and they get one day that they sub, they get that one following that 1 week on their ODJFS. So see here, you see this employee Betty, she probably worked one day, and she gets that week. So how is it calculated? It actually starts with the start date of the quarter to date range. So again, it starts with the first Saturday of the quarter, and then it looks at the Sunday prior to that to start how the count is starting. And then the stop date uses the last Saturday of the month of that quarter. So here is 13 weeks. So the fourth quarter of 2024 was 10/1 because that is the quarter that for the 3 months. But the system is using the date range of 9/24 to 12/31 located to locate the count of weeks. So again, we go from September, we look at the first Saturday of the quarter, which is the 5th, and then we go back to the first Sunday. And then that is counted. So this September 30th, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th are counted in that week's count. So that's what the report is looking at. And then it goes from every Saturday till the end on last Saturday, December 28th. The next thing, it finds the work days. So it any work day, it gets counted as a week. And just a reminder, it's not checking for any employees that are paid during the quarter. It's only looking for any work days in that quarter count from the 29th or 28th, what was it? 29th to the 28th of December. So any days that were entered on the calendar, even though they may not be paid, is going to show. So again, the maximum number of weeks of the quarter is the number of Saturdays contained within that count. And that's will be your max for the quarter. So what does it look at? What is the week's qualifying? So the count of the employees for the weeks is that looks at their job calendars. So if their jobs are attached to calendars with work days, holidays, calamity days, makeup days, that is considered, 1 day is considered a week. Any attendance, substituting days within the current quarter, that is considered if they work 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, they get 1 week during that week. And then any core adjustments to ODJF weeks. That is what the weeks is looking at. Items to consider when you're looking at weeks for employees, if you're verifying them. The report does not look at the archive status of an employee. So if that employee is archived, even though they're archived, and if they have an attendance record that falls within that time for a job that does not have a calendar stop date, it will show up on your report. So we always make sure your compensation calendar start and stop dates are entered. So once they are done with a job, or even add a calendar stop date now, you can do that with a job that's current, to make sure that they have a stop date when that compensation is supposed to be done, enter a calendar stop date. So, and when they're no longer employed, make sure that calendar stop dates are entered for each of those jobs, because if one job is showing, it has a job calendar and there's no calendar stop date, it's going to show up on your report. It's still looking at that, even though that our employee is archived. So again, if one or both dates are missing, and again, if the employee has a job calendar and no calendar stop date, it's going to be included for that week. So again, they're always going to want to make sure they put that on their maybe checklist when employee is leaving, or at the end of a job that the position is no longer being paid. Make sure they add that to their checklist, add a calendar stop date right away. That will eliminate any problems when they're looking at their ODGFS report. Okay. And again, another one, maybe they're going to have employees could be paid without a week count. So maybe this is a sub works. They work for example, the last week of March, but they don't get paid until the first pay of April. So again, it depends on when your pay periods and your pay dates fall range. So any adjustments for ODGF weeks, again, use your core adjustments, use ODGF weeks, enter the amount of number that you want to add or subtract to. So if your employee is showing 2, but they should have total of 13, then you have to add that difference to get that amount. Enter the date, which falls in the quarter, and then the quarter to date checkbox. The next one is the paid in month. So these 3 columns. So what we have to do first is find all the employees that were paid in the quarter. And this is done by searching for history to find the payrolls that these employees that fall within that range of the pay dates in the quarter. So we use the beginning, then we use the beginning and the ending dates of that payrolls to determine how those, if they fall within that 12th month given. So for example, here for my district, I went to the payroll processing, and I added the start and stop dates in my grid, which you can do here. I use this a lot. I think it's helpful. Then you can see your payday. I just move that over, and then I can see my start and stop dates. But again, you always have to remember, if you have those districts that have date ranges difference for different subs or something, they're going to have to make sure they remember to look at these dates also, because in your grid, it's not going to show these different date ranges. So that's always a reminder to always double check. And you might have to go into each payroll detailed to find those. So for example, if they, for this district, the last pay was 12/20 to 11/23, or the pay date was 12, excuse me. Start date to stop, it did not include the 12th of the month. So that district's going to get 0. That's how I know why this is 0, because it did not include for that 3rd month, that 12th of the month range, because the 7th is the Saturday. And again, I found that out by going here and just including my start and stop dates. And you can see here the there it goes, 11/23 to 12/06 for my last pay of the quarter. All right. And again, like I said, you make sure you change or check your pay date range. You can go to the payroll item detail, or you can use your payroll reports, and that will show that on the payroll detail reports here in your date range selections. You can see them here too. If you run your reports using the file archive, you can go to your prior and pull those reports that way, going to the file archive under your pay reports. The next one is, how do we get the totals paid 12th of the month, 1, 2, and 3, which is here, these right here. this looks at the current ODJFS reportable flag. So, again, anybody that was employed and paid during those months. So when you run this report, and they change that flag after the fact, it may not match your amounts, but those counts are looking at the current month ODJF reportable and not history. All right. Again, you can use an audit report to run to see if those flags have been changed, and use the audit employee, and then do a search for the ODGF reportable flag, and search for somebody that maybe that flag got changed. Okay. The ODGF report deceased, for deceased employees, again, the wages are reported to ODGFS. So when they're making those adjustments and doing those core adjustments, this amount, it will not be listed under the quarter to date wages, but only under the quarter to date ODGF wages. So those wages are being reported to ODGFS. You may not, they might see a difference when they're looking at employee. They're going to see the quarter to date wages and the ODF wage don't match. If they subtract that and look at what they reported for the deceased portion for their wages, that should be the difference. And that amount does get submitted to ODGFS. Quarter to date wages zero, a few things to look for. Check if the employee is out of state. If they're out of state, they could have zero wages. If the employee lives in Ohio, check the payroll item stop date. Make sure the stop dates didn't get entered too soon, or if they had a stop date all together when they're running their payrolls. This can make their quarter to date gross wages zero. And if that's the fact, which we don't see this very often, I think I've seen one district, we had a ticket for, they forgot to add a payroll Ohio or something, and had a stop date, so it wasn't withholding wages. So when they were looking on the report, his quarter date gross wages were zero. So if they need to update that line, which is your very first line here, you want to use core adjustments 002 and use total gross. Enter the amount, the date that falls within the quarter, and then the 2 date boxes. Make sure you select that. And that will update that line to get your wages correct. And again, they can use their earnings register, pull the earnings register so far of what they've gotten paid, and then they can use that amount for the total gross for Ohio. Any questions on the ODJFS report so far? Just kind of going over that. Okay, the next thing is the quarter report balancing. Again, to get your calculated adjusted gross, it takes the total gross minus the total annuities plus any non-cash earnings. So my quarter report, where I'm looking at, is here in the total summary. The total adjusted gross is taken from the totals on the employee's federal tax record. So that would be your 001. And then the difference could be from adjustment journals or NC1 or NC3 added after the last payroll using adjustments. Because again, these NC3, that non-cash earnings is only NC1 added during payroll. That's history. So again, look for those after the last payroll using adjustments. Again, look for any payroll item start or stop dates that have been changed in the new year. So they don't want to change them too soon. They want to make sure they're balancing their quarter report before, if they do update those start and stop dates, they want to make sure that they're not doing it too soon. And then that quarter report is not going to look at those anymore because they changed the years. The quarter report, another thing, look for payroll item checks for the quarter. This should equal your payroll items showing on your quarter report. So again, look for your what you paid in for your taxes, your city taxes, annuities, such, make sure those are matching what you sent in. Also, you want to verify any electronic transfers. So this could be probably your federal, your Medicare, any payroll items that you have marked as electronic transfer. Double check those amounts too, for make sure those totals match. And then also your total gross showing on your quarter report should match what you dispersed to USPS for your payroll posting. So again, your total gross should match what you dispersed. So now kind of breaking down the quarter report 941, how do these figures come about? Where do we get these? How does this software calculate that when they're running the report? And again, in our documentation under quarter report, we have that all listed here for you. I just kind of put it in the PowerPoint, but again, we have that breakdown here for you for each, what each line and what it's looking at. So the quarter report, the first line we're going to go through, the totals count per 941 instructions. So this is what the districts have to submit when they're filling out their 941. Sometimes it might be 0. And why is that? It's because, again, that last pay of that quarter did not get that 12th of the month included. So again, for my district, my 12/20 pay, which is my last pay, was 11/23 to 12/6. And you can see it did not include the 12th of the month. So what we usually suggest, and also look for pay lags for districts that are really off on their pay lag on their weeks with their parent. They might have weeks prior on their beginning ending is off another week or so. That could also change their count to be 0. So what we suggest, what option they can do is run when they're running their first pay in January, which covers that first pay of the 12th. They can use that count for that employee then. So if I do, let's see, yeah, they can use that count. There we go, total employees. So that's another option they can do to get that count on the pay report. The next line is the total employees paid in a quarter. Again, this is not used for 941 reporting, but I just wanted to throw it in here. Where is that coming from? It's any core adjustments for an active pay item in the quarter to date range, any employee paid in the quarter to date, and then it's one or more positions quarter to date gross that's greater than 0. So it's adding up those positions those employees have been paid on. So some employees might get paid 2 jobs and that gross is greater than 0. So it's going to be counted total employees paid in the quarter. So it's going to be higher than your total employees on your count. Line 2 and line 3, quarter date taxable wages and the quarter to date federal withholding. So how do we come up with that? So first, quarter to date taxable wages. So from this total summary page of your quarter report, which is right here, you should be able to take the quarter to date taxable Medicare, the quarter date total calculated adjusted gross plus a Medicare pickup amount, which you can find down on the 941 portion of the quarter report, equals your quarter to date taxable gross. So if I go to my quarter report, total adjusted gross, take that figure here and add in my Medicare portion. And that will equal my quarter to date taxable wages on my report, which is right here. Okay. One other thing you might want to remember also is if you have that, to make sure you add in other refunds outside of payroll. So go to your core adjustments, look for any adjustments made to 001 applicable gross. That has to be considered in on that figure also. Or any voids. So just a reminder of that. I like to use custom grid creator. Again, I know the districts at this time cannot use that, but you at the ITC can, and I use history payroll item. I use this a lot for getting what was a payroll history, and then you can use the code, and then I use more. And I can go in here and add any lines that I want. I can add in the payroll date. So I can search for pay dates. I can use pay group date ranges also in here. Start and stop dates. A lot of history that you can use in here. You can use this for any payroll item. And then what I do is I use the report option here, and I pull a report. To get my 001 federal wages. So that's another way you can balance using as a balancing tool. And then I use that to use my applicable gross and then the total employee amount. And you always want to make sure you do the total employee amount, not necessarily for federal. I mean, sometimes you might have error adjustments for them, but you want to make sure you're not just adding up the amount column, because it's not adding in any additional or error adjustments in that. So you always want to make sure you do a total employee amount or total employer amount, because that is going to give you the total amount of all those other amounts totaled in here. And then I use that to make sure, and I do my sum for each, add in my Medicare pickup, and that line should balance exactly what my quarter report is showing on my federal wages, which it does. So again, like I said, make sure that you're looking at core adjustments for any 001 applicable gross adjustments, because that you will have to figure that into your balance minus or subtract whatever they did for that quarter to that applicable gross, and then that should balance to get your total for your quarter taxable wages. Simple, right? Never goes that easy. Okay, next thing. Same thing for quarter to date federal withholding. I did the exact same thing. When I ran the report, I have my federal wages here. This is my total. I totaled the sum, and it matches exactly what matches on my quarter report. And again, look for core adjustment amount withheld for 001 outside of payroll refunds, or maybe voids or payments created and void in the same quarter. Just a reminder to look at those. That has to be included in that history. The next thing is your line 5A, quarter date taxable wages for FICA. Again, what I did, I used my custom grid creator, excuse me, and look for any 693 codes. Make sure I entered my pay date ranges. And then I pulled that report. So here's my 3 employees that are only into FICA, and my totals for the applicable gross. Make sure, again, you want the total employee amount calculated and total employer amount. And those two match my figure on my quarter report. So again, you want to make sure, again, adjustments. Always make sure you look for adjustments for 693 for any applicable gross or amount withheld outside of the payrolls. Anything that was done or adjusted. The next thing is the line 5C quarter to date Medicare taxable wages. So from the total summary, again, we're going to take that quarter to date total gross right here. And we're going to minus the section 125 and HSAs, because those are not in the wages. And how I got that, an easy way to do that, I went to W2 report here in our documentation, and under the W report summary breakdown, we have report.json reports that you can pull when, and you can do this anytime if you're balancing the W2 every quarter. You can use these and you can just right click and copy the link and pull those into your test files or the districts to pull these totals. And I went down here to section 125 in HSA and I copied that. And then I went to reports and brought that into, imported that in, went to section 1 and opened it up. And here, as long as I'm still in my December processing, because I know those are my fourth quarter amounts, I deleted out these here and I went down here on the and pulled in quarter to date withholding and some. And then when I pulled that report, it knows to look just at those quarter to date figures. And I already ran one here, and here is my employees. So I know that I have to subtract off this amount from my Medicare wages for the quarter. So that's my 106,774.67 to get my new total. Then I have to add in my Medicare pickup amount, which is on the 941, plus any non-cash earnings to get my Medicare here, going back and forth to get this figure here. Right. So again, make sure that you're adding any, look for any core journal type applicable gross for Medicare tax items, any core adjustment journals for type of life insurance outside of payroll. Those will have to be added in also because again, that non-cash earnings does not include anything from outside of payroll for NC1. And again, I use my custom grid creator because I like my custom grid creators. Because I like to see the figures pulled in, all the applicable gross. Make sure you do your total lines again, not just employer-employee amount, because again, if they have any error adjustments, it's not going to be added in there. So you got to make sure you use a total employee amount calculator or total employer amount, just so it's a total. And then I do my sums. And I know I have my Medicare pickup correct because that's my Medicare pickup line and that matches exactly what it's showing on my report. Okay, so when I did my Medicare, that line on my custom grid creator matches what it shows. I know I'm correct. So again, probably won't be that easy if you have a district that does a lot of adjustments or corrections. Again, they will have to remember just to go to adjustments and look for anything that they might have changed for 692. Another thing to look for, employer rates, employer rates. Make sure they have those in correctly for the employer rate 1.45 or the total 2.9. Again, they can go to payroll item, go to Medicare, and then if they go to more here, they can add the employer rate. I already did that, but it's usually unchecked when if you go to the Medicare tab here, and then they can add that in. So once you do that, though, it takes you out and you have to go back in. So it has to recalculate here. Now I have to go back to Medicare. Oh, it removed. I don't want that. Okay, there we go. Let's try that again. back to Medicare. And there we go. So now you can go in. I like to do and use this top to find if something was entered wrong, because it's going to show it here if something was entered incorrectly. So just make sure these are, or you can run a report and search it that way and do Excel. If you want to do it that way also, you can do it that way. The employer, and then check the employer rates. Brings up the 2.9 when you're doing the search. And then you can search if there's something 1.46 or something 1.455, something got entered wrong. So again, that's just a helpful tool. So again, if you add up all those together, you should get your taxable Medicare wages. So then the next line is the Medicare contributions. So the applicable gross, again, on my spreadsheet that I created, applicable gross, I took that amount and times 1.45%, and it got my 32,786.87. It's off a few cents again for rounding. So again, if I go to my report, this is the employee. If I add in my employer pickup amount of the 2,446, it equals exactly to my 32,756. Oh, excuse me, wrong line. 30,000 plus the 2,446 equals the 32,786. Oops, I think I have that wrong there. I have to fix that amount there. I did that wrong. And then the quarter to date employer contributions, the Medicare contributions. If I took the 35 total employer minus the 32 equals minus the 2,400, you get your 32,786. Because it's added in twice in the total employer amount here on my spreadsheet for Custom Creator. So again, any core adjustments, add or subtract any adjustments to withholdings. And again, you will look for anything that's the board payroll amount of 692 or the board pickup amount of payroll item, because that is for the employers section. And then this here, well, that's really tiny. Can't see that. Add or subtract any adjustments for the withholding. That would be the employee portion. And then the board pickup and the board amount of payroll would be for the employer's Medicare. Okay. The next thing is another thing to look at, the additional withholdings. For my district here, they didn't have any additional withholdings over the 200,000 mark. So not a lot of your districts may have that. But how do you fill out your 941 then with this figure that we added? This was recently added, I was a year ago or so. This line 5. So what you will do is to calculate the employer pickup amount over the threshold. So what you do is take your quarter to date taxable wages. Oh, I don't have that because this is a test. I don't have the original where you get that, but you use this quarter to date taxable wages, Medicare wages, and you times that times the 1.45%. And then that is the amount you would enter on line 5C of your 941, the Medicare taxable wages, and then the quarter to date employer Medicare pickup amount, or Medicare contribution, excuse me. And then for that additional line, you use the 661,505, and you take that times the 0.009, and that equals the 553.55. So that is what the amount you're using. And this should be a lot easier, because before we added this, it was very hard to determine what amount do we need to use for that taxable wages and tips. So now, since they added this, all you have to do is look at that 941 for that quarter and go ahead and use that figure and take it times and fill that in. And another way to determine if that amount is correct is take the 15,830 minus the 15,277 equals 553.55. And then if I take the 61,505 times the 0.009%, it's 553.55. So I know that amount is correct, that is the amount that was paid over that $200,000 threshold that the employee had to pay on. The employee portion that the board had to pay on. The next line is the federal withholding deposit. How does this figure be calculated? What it does, it takes your line 3, the quarter to date federal withholding, plus line 5A, the FICA employees and the FICA employer. So it's both. Plus the Medicare contributions of employee and employer. It takes both. And that's how it comes up with the figure for the 253,673.52. So adding those up should get that federal withholding deposit line. The quarter report total summary, I'm not going to go through this too much because I know we're going into almost an hour already. I just wanted to put it out there that this is here. And we do, again, have that on our quarter report out here, where those figures are coming from. So I wanted to add those in there too. Like the total gross is each position paid. Again, this does not include the non-cash earnings. The total annuities line, this is any total payroll items and adjustment journals. Non-cash earning is just life insurance and C1 during payroll. The total adjusted gross then takes that sum of adjusted gross of a historical federal payroll items. And then the calculated adjusted gross is the total difference minus the annuities plus the non-cash earnings. And again, you will only get that difference in adjusted gross if you're not in balance. So the total employees on the quarter report here that you're seeing, the 3, like that one there, that is for a total employees paid in the fiscal year. So again, if districts need to get what the total employees that were paid in their fiscal year, they can use their second quarter report and look at that figure to get that number. If they need to fill out a report or something, they can use that. Okay. So the total employee count per the 941 instructions, again, this is coming from if the last pay of the quarter includes that 12th of the month. So again, minus 0 because we did not have that 12th of the month. So again, they can use that next pay report that includes that 12th of the month, maybe the first pay in January, that does have that and get the number off of that. The total employee paid in the quarter, again, this is informational. And this is the total number paid in the quarter. So again, we went through that prior. It's the same thing as it was what I had earlier in my PowerPoint. It looks at any core adjustments for the active pay item, employees paid, and then the total of the number of positions. So it's going to be a little higher. The total employee reportable for ODJFS, again, this is using the 12th of the month. So again, they are anybody that's not paid, not including that 12th of the month, probably will be 0. So again, they need to check their pay reports for any payroll pay lags, or their paid group date ranges are different. The deduction item summary, I just want to put it out there, kind of where these are coming from. The payroll item configuration abbreviation, this is that deduction name on the report. Again, if that is blank, then it's going to use what you have filled out in your W-2 abbreviation field on the payroll item configuration. The dead column uses the payroll item history configuration, and that would be what we're talking about here. And then the totals, the quarter to date, year to date, fiscal to date, and then the taxable. These are all from payroll history and then any adjustments. The next one is if you had deceased employees, again, once you're entering that in, you are going to have a difference on your quarter report. So just a reminder, when they're doing that adjustments, they will see that. Another thing could be any adjustments added, NC1 or NC1 or NC3 added after the last payroll using adjustments. Again, that's life insurance, a taxable benefit. And again, another just reminder, look for any start and stop dates that have been entered too early, changing them to the new year before they balanced a quarter report for the prior quarter. One thing that Lori did, updated on in our documentation, and it was wonderful. If you go to the appendix, go down to useful procedures, voiding payments and voiding and reissuing. She did a lot of updating on this, just kind of separating them out. So now there's two sections, one for just voiding, one for voiding and reissuing, to simplify it a little bit. And then we try to touch upon what the quarter report, by doing each one, what does it do? What does it touch on the W-2 report, quarter report, payroll items? What is it touching? Kind of maybe will be helpful to your district so they can see if they're off on something, they can go to here and say, oh, I did have a void, or I did have void and reissue. And if they go down here to these sections, they can say, that is why I'm off, because it's touching these and not that. So she really did a nice job on this to update that. So I'm going to touch upon the ones that are touching the quarter report. So the payroll items being voided, we'll just go here and follow the. So if you had a void during the current quarter, current calendar year, and current fiscal year, it's going to touch all of them because it's in the current. So just kind of think it's not outside. So the quarter date, year to date, fiscal, it's going to update all those figures on the quarter report for individual information. Under the deduction item summary, it's going to touch the quarter to date total, taxable, year to date, and fiscal to date totals. And then your 941 is going to update accordingly. The next one, what if you have a void outside the current quarter, outside the current calendar year, but it's within the fiscal year? So again, it's outside of those other two, but inside the current fiscal. So you know it's not going to update anything that's outside. So it's not going to update your quarter to date gross totals or year to date gross totals or taxable. But it is going to update your fiscal because it's within the fiscal year yet. Deduction item summary, same thing. Year to date, quarter to date, not updated, but fiscal to date total is. And then your 941 is not going to be updated because that is quarter to date only information. The next thing, voided outside the current quarter, but within the current calendar and outside the current fiscal year. So it's outside quarter, outside fiscal, but inside calendar year. What is it going to touch? It's going to touch the individual informations. It's going to touch just the year to date because it's inside the current year, but outside of the fiscal and quarter. So not going to update. Deduction item summary, year to date is updated, but not the fiscal and quarter to date. So your 941 is not going to get updated because it's outside of the quarter. Okay. And then the last one we have here is if it's in the current quarter, but outside of the current calendar and outside the current fiscal year. So current quarter, but outside calendar year and fiscal year. Quarter report, individual information. It's not going to touch quarter to date, taxable, year to date, or fiscal, not updated. Oh, excuse me, outside of everything, excuse me, outside current calendar and fiscal. I said that wrong. I apologize. I didn't think that made sense. And then the deduction item summary is not going to touch anything either because it was completely outside of the year, quarter, and fiscal year. So it's not going to touch 941 either. So, because it's not touching anything. So we kind of wanted to update that. Please take a look at that, read over the information. Please pass this on to your districts to let them know this has been updated. And hopefully this will be a little bit more easier for them when they're going about doing voiding a payroll payments. Okay. And we also have the voiding payee and the refund payment, which I don't believe changed, and that's just at the bottom. The next thing I wanted to go over quick was the voiding and reissuing. That also was updated. So we have if it's voided and reissued in the same calendar fiscal year, or if it's voided and reissued outside of the calendar fiscal year. So either they have to pick which one and they can follow those steps then. Another thing that we put in there, you have two options for your districts. One would be for them to proceed voiding a check from 2024 that was wrong, voiding it in 2025 and running a special pay in 2025, but they want that amount to be on a W-2C for 2024. So they want that to go towards their 2024 corrections. They don't want that to be in 2025 at all. Maybe an employee that doesn't work anymore, or they just want that amount to be corrected in 2024 instead of being in 2025. So we have that voiding original payment, process the special pay for the amount now, and then file the corrections to remove it from that year. And we recommend, this is what we recommend for district is really if they just earned the wrong amount in 2024 and they had to void that payment, they return the net amount of that check. It really should be corrected in 2024 using a W-2C and backing out all those figures. So once again, take a look at the documentation here and it gives you step by step of what steps you need to do. And then the option 2, which is if your district really pushes back and says, nope, we just want to void the payment in 2025 and do a special pay in 2025, and then use that in the current calendar year. Then they can go ahead and follow these steps if it's inside that fiscal year or if it was outside the current fiscal year. Excuse me. So if they are doing the correction and keeping it in the current year, they got to remember that they're going to get an error on the W-2 calculated adjusted gross different than total adjusted gross. So that is why I wanted to highlight on that if they're running that special pay and keep it in the current year, they will get that difference. So, and if they're voiding a check and it was in one quarter and voiding it in another, they have to remember when they're looking at running the quarter and they're saying, why is it not showing voided in this next quarter? It's because the system is still seeing that check as the prior quarter. So when you void it, it's going to be in the prior quarter. So you're going to have to do a 941 for that quarter. The check was originally included in, and then fill that in to make those corrections with the 941X. One other thing, quarter report taxable benefit, NC3. This is just wanted to highlight on if you're using the taxable benefit under adjustments, it's not going to affect the quarter report at all. So just a reminder. And then that NC3 taxable benefit that does not get added to the quarter report total summary non-cash earnings. So remember, that does not get included in this figure. This is just life insurance, this line. Fringe benefits. If they're using fringe benefits, the 001, this only updates the federal tax and state total gross and taxable gross for the W-2, and it does not hit the W or the quarter report at all. Does not affect it. The other thing to if they use a life insurance during payroll, which we highly suggest, because then you don't have to do any of the adjustments. But if they miss it during payroll, then they have to use that life insurance NC1 under 001 to ensure that their W-2 and quarter is going to bounce for federal, state, OSDI, city if applicable, and Medicare total gross and taxable gross. The effects on quarter report is total summary. It's added to the total summary non-cash earnings, added to the documentation summary, quarter to date taxable and year to date, and added to the 941 quarter to date taxable wages and quarter to date Medicare taxable wages. So I just want to hit upon the ones that really are going to affect the quarter report, and just so a reminder when they are doing these, that's what the quarter report is going to change. And the last thing is we do have a juror issue out there for Medicare pickup employees. If a district needs to update their Medicare applicable gross for a full Medicare pickup employee, and it's towards the Medicare portion for the pickup, when they're doing that adjustment, like here I have an example, I use the type of applicable gross. We don't have a flag in there right now to check saying this is a Medicare pickup or full Medicare pickup employee or something. So when you're running it and running the quarter report, then it's going to show two lines. It's going to show under a separate line. It's going to show under employer contribution instead of going under the employer pickup where it should go. But it's not, because right now we don't have a flag to say, please put this applicable gross towards the pickup job for that payroll item. So I just want to put that out there. It's just so a reminder if your districts ran it. I think we ran into this one time, but I just wanted to put it out there if your districts do have that and have a question, and that is why. So, okay, I know that was a lot to take in. Is there any questions on the quarter report? I just wanted to highlight the ODGF balancing, quarter report balancing at this time, to get to help out when they're balancing. Okay, if there isn't any more questions, again, please utilize the PowerPoint that we have out there. And I think our next Fridays with Fisco is the February releases, which will be on March 7th. And that will be for all the releases that we have coming out, that came out in February.
Thank you,
Okay.
Andrea.
I'm sorry?
I said thank you, Andrea.
Oh, you're welcome. I hope it was helpful.
It was awesome.
Good, great. Okay, well, thank you. Have a wonderful weekend. Stay warm and be careful, and have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.